what we want to do today is focus in on what's contained in the perineum, what are the limits of the perineum. So, first of all, tackle the question of borders of the perineum. So the superficial border, or the superior border is the pelvic diaphragm, right? So here's pelvic diaphragm. That's our superior border. Okay. The lateral borders are the edges of the pelvic inlet, or outlet, sorry, including the sacrotuberous ligament, the ischiopubic ramus, and all the rest. Okay. Pubic symphysis, coccyx. Okay. And then the inferior border, so the inferior border would be the skin of the perineum. So this is a superficial compartment all the way to the skin of the perineal region. Okay. Then we've got the divisions. So we've got the anal triangle here, and we've got the urogenital triangle on this side here. Of course, the anal triangle contains the anal aperture and sphincters. The urogenital triangle contains the perineal membrane and everything contained in the deep perineal space that we've been talking about, as well as the urethral and vaginal openings.
So the perineal and which one is the urethral and vaginal?
So for the anterior portion of it, the urogenital triangle. Yeah. So here is okay. Good heavens. Okay. So those are the basic borders. Now, in this space, so there's a space between the deep perineal pouch and the pelvic membrane, and then continues on here. There's this space, and this is what we call the ischioanal fossae. The anterior recesses of the ischioanal fossae reach in that space underneath the pelvic diaphragm and above the deep perineal pouch. And this is all filled with fatty tissue.
The recess?
The whole recess. If I can write better. Okay. Now, what's the point of that? Well, part of it's cushioning, right? And then also part of it is it allows some compressible material. So fat's fairly compressible. It allows movement of the pelvic diaphragm, so expansion of the pelvic diaphragm if need be, expansion of the anal canal when somebody's defecating, etc. So it makes that area much more malleable, much more movable than it would be if it was, say, like connective tissue, or another form of connective tissue, a more fibrous form of connective tissue. Okay. And this extends out to the layers of the gluteal muscles. So it's bordered on superficially by the gluteal muscles, as well as the deep perineal pouch here. Excuse me.
What else besides the gluteal muscles?
The deep perineal pouch. So we've got it coming in there, and then the gluteal muscles also superficially. Okay. Here is just another view of it, so you can see how it's extending into these anterior recesses here. And those recesses are kind of a pyramidal shaped space between the rising sides of the pelvic diaphragm and the flat deep perineal space, or flatter deep perineal space. Excuse me. Okay. So that is the ischioanal fossa. Okay, so then we've been talking about the deep perineal pouch, then just superficial to that, so just on the superficial side of the perineal membrane, we also have the superficial perineal pouch. And the most important structures in this are the erectile tissue, the male and female. And then also, not shown on this figure, but there's a muscle that runs along here. And this is the superficial transverse perineal muscle. And I believe, let me see, does it show it? Yeah, so it's shown actually on this next slide, so you'll see it in place there. So remember, we had the deep perineal, transverse perineal muscle, and this is just superficial to it in the same location, attached to the perineal body here. Excuse me. Okay. So then for the female reproductive structures, female erectile tissue, so remember we've got two different types of erectile tissue. We've got corpus cavernosum and corpus spongiosum. So the purple is all going to be corpus spongiosum tissue. There we go. And then the pink is always corpus cavernosum or corpus cavernosa in plural. So we've got the crus of the clitoris in the females, which is anchored to the ischiopubic ramus. So here's the ischiopubic ramus. So it's anchored to that, and that provides stability for that tissue, more important in males than in females. Then we have the body of the clitoris here. Here we go, body of the clitoris. And the glans clitoris is then moving into corpus spongiosum. We also have the bulb of the vestibule, which is spongiosum as well. Point out the greater vestibular gland. This produces a mucus that lubricates the external folds and orifices of the female. It can get infected and inflamed, and excuse me. This is, that's right. This would be a Bartholin cyst. I gotta change colors there.
Can you repeat that?
Yep. Okay, so Bartholin cyst, I'll write it down, is when the greater vestibular gland, also known as the Bartholin's gland, gets infected and inflamed. There you go, okay. And the bulb of the vestibule is anchored to the perineal membrane. So it's actually anchored to that, keeping it in place. Okay, so what's the purpose of these tissues? Well, predominantly for both of them, at least in the female, they are part of the, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't even know. Anyways, what happens is they are involved in erection, even in female, because they get engorged with blood, and then muscles lying over the top of them push a lot of that blood into the body and glands of the clitoris. So those muscles are here, ischiocavernosus muscle and the bulbospongiosus muscle, as you guys have been learning in lab. And so what happens, these muscles during erection, they contract and force more blood up into the body of the clitoris and the glans clitoris. Okay.
So those considered supraphysical or?
These?
Yeah. Are they-
No, they're skeletal muscle. Here's the superficial transverse perineal muscle here too, so you can see it. And they all attach, or the medial one's attached to the perineal body. Okay. So then we'll switch to the male version. So here we've got the crus of the penis attached to the ischiopubic ramus, and the corpus cavernosa in the body of the penis, as we've been learning in lab as well. And so that's all the corpora cavernosa tissue. And then with the bulb of the penis and the corpus spongiosum, all is that same type of tissue as well. In addition, the glans penis is kind of a cap over the corpora cavernosa. And the bulb of the penis is also attached to the perineal membrane, just as the bulb of the vestibule is in the female. Okay, and then we have the same muscles in the male as in the female. They look slightly different here. The bulbospongiosus muscle comes and fuses together at the midline raphe here to cover the bulb of the penis. And again, both the ischiocavernosus and bulbospongiosus muscle is important during erection, so squeezing blood into the body of the penis. The bulbospongiosus muscle has two additional functions. It also helps empty the urethra during micturition. And it also contracts, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't remember. Yes, the bulbospongiosus muscle contracts reflexively during ejaculation to produce a pulsated emission of semen. So it's important during semen emission.
Say that one more time, sorry.
Yeah, sure. So the bulbospongiosus muscle, in addition to helping with erection, also is important in generating the pulsating ejection of semen from the penis. So it contracts reflexively during ejaculation. Okay. Good? Any other questions? Okay. Okay, if we move superficially, we've got a few external structures and orifices I want to point out. So obviously in the anal triangle there's the anal aperture, which we all familiar with. In the urogenital triangle, then I want to just jump to the next slide and point out a couple of structures I want you to know for the lecture here. So in lab, on the cadavers, we saw the labia majorum, and so these are out here on either side. And then interior to that, we have the labia minora or labium minus, singular, and these are smaller flaps of tissue, smaller folds of tissue that enclose the vestibule. Excuse me. And then the other structure I want to point out is the hymen, and this is a membrane that partially occludes the vaginal opening. until the female becomes sexually active, and then it's disrupted. Oh, that's gotta suck.
So it used to be like in the olden days, like they would watch and concentrate the marriage, and if the woman didn't believe in it, it said that she was impure, but horseback riding can actually do it as
Disrupt
well.
that as
For
well.
gymnastics, I mean, really.
Right.
It's like-
Okay, cool. I suppose anything that puts pressure in that area would work. Okay. All right, so in the male, just want to point out a couple things about the scrotum. So the scrotal sac is actually the male version of the labia majora. During development, those folds come in and grow over and meet again at the raphe and fuse at the raphe. So this is the same embryological origin for the labia majora and for the scrotum. Just want to switch to the next slide. A couple of things to point out here at the distal end of the penis. So I've been studying the glans penis there, that cap covering the tip of the corpus cavernosa, corpora cavernosa. There we go. And then also I want to point out the prepuce. Another name for this is the foreskin. And this is excised along this kind of region here during circumcision. Okay. So we'll keep that stuff pretty simple. I don't think you need to know more than that. Okay, so then covering the perineum, we've got superficial fascial layers. And remember the fascia coming down the abdominal wall, that superficial fascial layer coming down the abdominal wall, that is the, remember the name for it? Scarpas, yeah. Oops, there's a C in there. So the Scarpa's fascia, also known as the membranous layer of the superficial fascia of the abdomen, whatever, just continues onward and becomes the membranous layer of superficial fascia of the perineum. Covers the external reproductive structures and then fuses to the posterior margin of the perineal membrane. And remember, what's one of the major functions of fascia? Yeah, allows gliding. What are some other functions? Remember, it produces a barrier against what? Infection, and fluid accumulation. So if you've got an infection in the perineal area, this attachment of the fascia to the perineal membrane here, and then closing that area is going to help reduce the spread of infection. It's going to resist it, and also it's going to resist fluid accumulation spreading. So one of your body's defenses against systemic problems. Now if we take an anterior view of it, we also see that this same layer of fascia is attached to the deep fascia latae of the thigh. So the one of the fascial layers of the thigh, just inferior to the inguinal ligament. So this, and again, it's a border, it's a barrier preventing the spread of fluid accumulation or the spread of infection down the lower limb. Okay. Am I good there? Okay, so looks like the last bit we'll cover today is anatomy of perineal innervation. And the one nerve you have to remember is the pudendal nerve. That is the major source of innervation of the perineal region. I want you to know three branches of the perineal or the pudendal nerve. I want you to know the dorsal nerve of either the penis or the clitoris. So dorsal nerve of the penis in males, dorsal nerve of the clitoris in females, obviously. I want you to know the perineal nerve. This innervates the deep and superficial perineal pouches. And then finally, I want you to know the inferior rectal nerve, which innervates the anal triangle. And the next slide shows that branching and the innervation patterns nicely. Okay, so we have here in the inferior rectal nerve coming and branching into the anal triangle from the pudendal nerve here. Okay, so just remember the pudendal nerve, it goes in and out of the pelvic cavity a couple of different times and then finally exits through the pelvic outlet. Here is that exit point right there. Here's the perineal nerve moving forward into the urogenital triangle. And here you see the dorsal nerve of the clitoris coming in and innervating the clitoris as the dorsal nerve of the penis did in the male. Okay, so those three branches of the pudendal nerve. Okay, so these are some pictures not in your book. I'm going to talk a little bit about nerve blocks. And so, oh, is it already time? I guess we'll talk about it next time. We'll finish up on Monday and also have a review. So come with questions.
Hi, Kirsty. Happy weekend. Let me show you.
Question, so the perineal nerve is only,
Yeah, okay.
It just depends on the people that are able to stay there.